Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Virginia Morris. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is God by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant Frank Walker. Frank Walker was born in 1890 in Benalla, Victoria. He was the eldest of 6 children, born to George James Walker, a wool and grain merchant, and his wife Charlotte. Frank received his education at Northeastern College, Benalla. At the outbreak of the First World War, he was working with his father as a merchant. Frank Walker enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 19th of April 1915. He was assigned to the 3rd Reinforcements of the 46th Battalion with the rank of private and began a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service less than a month later, sailing from Melbourne on board the troop ship Medic. Private Walker reached England in July 1916 and continued training before heading to the Western Front in September. He joined his unit in the front lines in early October and was promoted to the rank of Lance Corporal in November, just as bitterly cold winter began to set in. Like many who succumbed to the difficulties of life in the trenches, Walker fell ill in December and spent the rest of the year in hospital behind the lines. He finally rejoined his unit in January of 1917 and rose quickly through the ranks, being promoted to corporal and then sergeant by the end of February. Soon the German forces began their strategic withdrawal to the Hindenburg Line. Allied units eagerly followed the German retreat, believing the war was perhaps finally drawing to a close. It was not long, however, until the withdrawal halted at the enemy's new front line, near the French village of Bullecourt. Here the Allies planned to mount an attack to break through German lines and capture the village. Before their attack, Walker received a commission, going into battle on the 11th of April 1917 with the rank of 2nd Lieutenant. His unit set out in heavy snow, gaining their cover from tanks rather than artillery. As they jumped over the parapet, the tanks quickly provided ineffective and the attacking infantry were left to expose murderous enemy fire. One of Walker's comrades described the battle in an attack in a letter home. "I tell you, it was hell let loose on that day. Our guns opened fire at 4 a.m. and the air seemed to be on fire with shells screeching over us. Of course, Fritz took a tumble that we were going to attack and open fire in return, and it was awful. When we hopped out, the machine guns and the rifles tore into us. Men were dropping all around, and when the officers saw the state of things, they ordered us to drop down, and what was left of us dropped into shell holes and kept low. My mate had a bullet right through his ribs, and another poor fellow who made an attempt to go back to the trenches was shot dead. Soon forced to retreat, Allied units suffered more than 3,000 casualties in one day. Among the missing was 2nd Lieutenant Frank Walker. One of his comrades recalled the last time he saw Walker. "I saw him wounded at Bullecourt in the German trench, which we had captured that morning. He was badly hit in the thigh, a bomb, and could do nothing for himself. We lost the ground at 11 a.m. and he was left behind." Walker remained missing for several months, during which time his family hoped for news that he had been taken as a prisoner. By November of 1917, however, there was no further news of him, and a court of inquiry ruled that Walker had likely been killed in action. His home community in Benalla felt the loss of a young officer keenly. The local newspaper reported, "Frank was a splendid type of young Australian. This young man, by his example, has proved a most glorious magnet for good and clean living. His sunny character, his constant work in the community was ever an inspiration to whoever knew him. No son of Benalla will be more severely and sorrowfully lost." 2nd Lieutenant Frank Walker has no known resting place. Today he is commemorated on the Australian Memorial at Villers-Brettonnier. He was 27 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name is listed at the Villers-Brettonnier Memorial is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Second Lieutenant Frank Walker, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.